Magandang umaga sa ating lahat, mga kapatid. Tayo po ay magsisimula ng ating SMG WORD Scripture Message from God, and we will now go into another topic. And this morning, are you still there with us, mga ating online parishioners at ang ating mga classmate din? Yan, this is our Bible encounter number 13. At we will digress a little because this is not about a certain character or personality in the scriptures. This is really more an exploration of, as I've said, the 10 commandments. And it is very important because this is occasioned by one question. So this morning, a little digression from our usual SMG word. Our Bible encounter will not be about a person specifically, but about the words of God, the Decalogue, the 10 words that He has given to us. And as I've said, this is occasioned by one question from our online parishioner. Let me read her message to us. Please enlighten me, bakit po magkaiba ang 10 Commandments sa Bible at sa Catholic Church? Specifically, ang Commandment number 2, and dalawa po ang tungkol sa covetousness, number 9 and 10 sa Catholic Church. Nakakalito po, Father, pwede po bang baguhin yung binigay ni God kay Moses? Yan, interesting question. And I was struck by it, and I said, maybe this needs an explanation for all of us not to be confused. So salamat sa ating online parishioners na nagbigay sa atin ng message na ito. Nga naman, very confusing, di po ba? Kasi nga, bakit sa ibang version, ang 10 Commandments ay 4 at 6. Sa atin naman ay 3 at 7. Yan. So yun po ang ipapaliwanag natin sa umagang ito. Okay pa po ba kayo? Yan. Una, linawin po natin, no, na madalas kapag meron tayong hindi naiintindihan sa ating pananampalataya ay ang turing kaagad natin ay mali yung ating sinasampalatayanan. I don't know, I can sense also and observe that in many of us, kapag naguguluhan tayo halimbawa sa isang bagay sa pananampalataya o meron tayong hindi naiintindihan, ang unang-unang pumapasok kaagad sa ating isip ay mali ang Katoliko. Even in this message from an online parishioner, this gives us some sort of an implied accusation that what we believe in is wrong. Halimbawa po, pwede po bang baguhin yung binigay ni God kay Moses? Again, if you go by way of, let's say, further reflection of the question, parang ang pinanggagalingan ay binago natin ang sinabi ng Panginoon kay Moises. Na parang mahilig tayong mga Katoliko na talikuran, tuligsain, o hindi sundin ang sinasabi ng Biblia. Napapansin niyo po ba yan? Every time that our faith is challenged, doctrinally or otherwise, our default mode all the time is to suspect that the faith of the Catholic is wrong because somebody challenged it and because somebody gave us some sort of a proof or evidence that what you are believing is wrong. Yeah, yun lang po. So kailangan linawin natin ito sa ating mga Katoliko na hindi porket hindi natin naiintindihan, mali na agad tayo. Kasi ganun nga po ang gustong ipasok sa ating isip ng ibang mga sekta o ibang denominasyon na laging gustong patunayan na mali kayong mga Katoliko. At nagpapadala naman tayo doon sa ganong kaisipan. Because people are challenging your belief then you easily give in to their explanation, and we tend to have that bias against your own faith, suspecting it to be wrong just because you don't know the explanation. I would like us to be clear about it, no, mga kapatid kong kapwa Katoliko. Don't be biased against your faith. This is the faith that you profess. This is the faith that you hold on to be true. And there is always an explanation to it that perhaps sometimes we don't understand really, because we really need to go deeper into that. Yan. So, malinaw po ba yung punto na yon? Huwag tayong maging bias sa Katoliko na pagka tayo ay hinamon sa ganitong bagay, ay sasabihin kaagad natin, ay oo nga, mali kami. Bakit nga gabay natin ginagawa ito? Mukhang tama sila. Yan. Kasi hindi lang po ito sa nagtatanong sa atin ngayon. Kung hindi, madalas po ako nakakarinig ng ganon. Na bakit po tayo mga Katoliko, mali-mali ang ating ginagawa? At ang lagi kong sinasagot doon ay, napag-aralan nyo na po ba? Kasi kung hindi nyo pa po napag-aralan, baka hindi naman tama na sabihin na mali agad. Kasi minsan po dito sa atin, no? Meron po ako isang security guard dito sa atin sa Parish. Meron po ako isang security guard na naabutan at siya'y nanonood ng isang explanation ng isang sekta. Hindi ko nababanggitin kung ano. So, hindi niya alam na nandun ako sa likod at nakikimarites ako sa kanyang pinapanood. Ginagawa niyo rin yan, di ba? So, nanonood yung si Kuya Guard ng program sa YouTube at isang sektang nagpapaliwanag na kesyo ganito, ang mga pari ganyan, yung mga Katoliko ganyan. At nakikinig lang ako, inoobserbahan ko siya na hindi niya alam. Maya-maya bigla siyang, uy, Father! Tapos bigla niyang inoff. No? Bigla niyang inoff. Sabi ko, Kuya, yung bang pinapanood mo, naiintindihan mo? Ay, opo. Gusto mo ba ipaliwanag ko din sa iyo kung ano yung pinapanood mo? At baka naman meron tayong maayos ng paliwanag dyan. Ay, hindi po, Father, wala po. Sabi ko, ganun tayong mga Katoliko, no? Na kung ano-anong napapanood natin sa YouTube, at doon na tayo. Parang we just take it hook, line, and sinker, sabi nga nila. Parang wala na tayong kakayanan na magdiskurso, wala na tayong kakayanan na sabihin natin na kausapin kung sino man na nagsasalita. Kasi ang nangyayari sa atin ay para tayong sponge. Para tayong sponge na kung ano nakikita natin, we absorb everything without question, without critical thinking. And I think this is a point that I would like to make to every one of us, lalo po sa inyo, mga seryosong gustong aralin ang Bible. Maganda po na we don't just absorb everything like a sponge just because brother so-and-so, preacher so-and-so told us that this is so. We have also to be critical about it, and we also need to scrutinize, where is this coming from? And why are they challenging your faith? We must always be ready to make an explanation for our hope in the Lord. Sabi nga ni San Pablo, we must always be ready to make an explanation of our faith. So this morning, I'd like to explain to you the 10 Commandments. Kung bakit 3 at 7 at hindi 4 at 6. Simulan po natin sa konteksto. Ang konteksto po ng pagbibigay ng 10 Commandments, syempre, binigay po ang 10 Commandments sa Exodus chapter 20. But the context is, as I've said previously, the context is Exodus chapter 19. Ano pong makikita natin sa Exodus chapter 19? The covenant. The covenant that God forged with His people. Specifically, you will find there, thus you shall say to the house of Israel and to Jacob, you have seen what I did to the Egyptians, how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now therefore, if you will obey my voice and keep my covenant, you shall be my own possession. Keyword, you shall be my own possession. If you will obey me and my voice and keep my covenant. So kanina po, sa ating unang pagbasa, sinelyuhan pa yung tipanang ito sa pamamagitan ng dugo na inihagis ni Moises sa altar at kalahati ng dugo sa mga tao. Forged in the blood of the young bull, which we know later on, this covenant will be through the blood of the Son of God. But that's for later. For now, the context of the giving of the Ten Commandments is the covenant between God and the children of Israel. As I've said yesterday, you cannot and will never understand the commandments without the covenant. Ang mga panuntunan, ang mga gabay sa buhay ay mawawalan ng saysay, kahulugan, kung hindi ito titingnan sa aspeto ng tipanan. Nabanggit ko rin po kahapon, halimbawa po sa ating mga ugnayan, our relationships will be meaningless if there are no parameters and boundaries. Tama? Anong mangyayari kapag sa loob ng tahanan walang batas? Anong mangyayari sa isang lipunan kapag walang batas? Ano mangyayari sa isang lipunan pag walang final arbiter ng batas? Ang tawag sa sociology doon ay anomy. Anomy is living in a society without laws, without rules, without regulations. At nangyayari po yan madalas. Kung wala pong ginagalang na batas, magkakagulo tayo. Sa classroom man yan, sa tahanan man yan, sa simbahan man yan, sa lipunan man yan, laging may batas. Pero ang batas ay walang saysay kung hindi titingnan sa aspeto at lente ng tipanan ng mga tao. Kaya nga even the Constitution is called a what? A charter. A charter meaning an agreement of all people, of all Filipino people, that we will obey and abide by these rules. Otherwise, you will not be a good citizen of the country. Same thing with the Ten Commandments. Again, repeating myself, the Decalogue, the 10 words, Decalogos, must be seen in the context of the Dialogos. The dialogue and relationship, the covenant between God and His people, and this covenant is governed by a certain rule, a fundamental rule, like a constitution, which we call the Ten Commandments. Decalogos. Israel's fundamental law is the Ten Commandments. Law and covenant are different. Covenant is the exchange of love and vows and fidelity between persons, and that vow and oath of fidelity is governed by certain specifying laws. Kumaga sa mga mag-asawa, ano po ang pinangako ninyo nung kayo'y kinasal? I do. I take you to be my wife, your husband. Grant us, O Lord, to be one heart and one soul from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and health, until death do us part. That is your covenant. That is your vows. Nalala niyo po ba yun, mga may asawa dito? You made your vows. And if we are to reduce the vows into 3 words, it's yes, I do. Pero yung yes, I do na yun, has to be specified daily by our fidelity, by our observance of the parameters in marriage, exclusivity, cooperation, unity, love, affection, intimacy, commitment. These are the specifying rules that govern that vow. Tama po? Kahapon, nung kami nag-uusap ni Father Caloy sa Hello Father, napag-usapan namin ng intimate wedding kahapon ni O, alam niyo na kung sino yung kinasal kahapon, ano? Yung artista si Maine Mendoza. Kasi ako po, at heart, ay Aldab po talaga ako. Kaya nagdurugo ang aking puso nang kinasal si Aldab kay... ibang usapan po yun. Pero next week, ako naman po, magkakasal din ako ng isang celebrity. Pero wag na nating pag-usapan yun kasi showbiz chismis yun. Usong-uso ngayon ng mga kasalan, no? Sa mga artista. O di ba nabalitaan niyo yun, si Bea tsaka si updated sa showbiz, you know? Ayan. Sino ba yung fiancé ni Bea? Si alam nila. Dominic. Ako, at heart, Bea John Lloyd ako eh. Di ba? Ang sakit daw makita na si Bea ay anyway. Ba't ba tayo napunta doon? No? Talking about covenant. Covenant is about a promise. But that covenant has to be specified in rules. Kasi kung walang rules that govern, you can do whatever you want. I do whatever I want. I do it my way. I don't want you to do it your way. My way or the highway. Anong covenant meron dun? Kaya ang covenant ay kasunduan. It's more than an agreement or a contract between a client and a provider or a supplier. No, it goes beyond that because the exchange is not just of goods and services, but the exchange is of love and affection and intimacy. But that covenant has to be governed by laws and commandments that will safekeep and protect the love. At yun po yung konteksto ng Ten Commandments. Huwag pong ihiwalay ang Ten Commandments na parang ito ay moral principles that are devoid of a context of relationship. Kasi pag binigay mo ang Ten Commandments sa mga tao ngayon na walang kaugnayan sa Diyos, ba't ko naman i-observe yan? Hindi naman ako Katoliko. Bakit ko naman i-observe yan? Hindi naman ako naniniwala sa Diyos. Example, thou shall not commit adultery. Kung hindi naman ako naniniwala dyan, ba't ko naman susundin yan? In the first place, may sarili akong batas na sinusunod. Ayan. So again, the point is, ba't ba ako paikot-ikot dito? Kasi gusto ko pong maintindihan ninyo, you cannot and we cannot take away the commandments from the context of the covenant, because the covenant is the vessel that holds the commandments and makes it meaningful. Without the covenant, the commandments are just what? Moralism. They're just principles that don't mean anything for people. You can follow it however you want. If you don't want to follow it, it's your choice. But if there is a covenant, I will observe it. Because it's not the rules that I am following. It is the love behind it that I am subscribing to. So in the Ten Commandments, the first three commandments, in Exodus chapter 20, the first three govern the relationship of the children toward the Father, Israel and God. Whereas the next seven govern the relationship of the siblings, fellow Israelites, toward each other. So where do we find the first three? We find the first three in Exodus chapter 20, verse 3 to 8. And we find the next seven in Exodus chapter 20, verse 9 to 17. Each of the specific commandment can be linked back to God's call to the people of Israel on Mount Sinai to be holy or to be set apart. Each commandment revolves around the sanctity or holiness of some aspect of the relationships between God and man. Ano po ang nakalagay sa Exodus chapter 19? Balikan po natin. Exodus 19 verse 3 to 6. If you will obey my voice and keep my covenant, you shall be my own possession among all peoples, for all the earth is mine. And you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. If you observe my covenant, this will sanctify you and make you a holy nation. And what does it mean to be sanctified? Going back to the original Latin of sanctification, sacrum facere, to make sacred is to separate one and to concentrate one and consecrate this to a person. So to be sanctified is to be consecrated, to be set apart from the ordinary. And that is why these 10 commandments are guidelines for our life so that we can be separated from the rest, so that we can consecrate ourselves to the Lord, so that we can be set apart from the ordinary. In other words, the 10 commandments are given to us as a means for our sanctification. And sanctification is to be consecrated totally to God, so that we are not consecrated to other things, to other gods, or to other values and principles. We are set apart from God, for God. So, the 10 Commandments is a means for being set apart. Again, going back to the covenantal relationship. Pag may tipanan tayo at meron tayong mga batas na susundin, nagkakaintindihan tayo. At pag wala tayong kaugnayan, hindi natin maiintindihan yung mga batas na ito. So to be sanctified means to be set apart for God. And so the Lord said to Moses, to be given to the people, you are my people, I will be your God, I will set you apart from the rest, but you have to observe this covenant and these commandments that I give to you. Otherwise, if you don't observe them, you will be just like the rest. You are no different from them because you have no covenant with me and because you don't observe our agreed covenant with each other. I don't know kung naiintindihan po yun, pero ang mga utos ng Diyos ay binigay para tayo ay mapasa Kanya, hindi mahiwalay sa Kanya. If you want to be with me, if you want to be my people, observe these rules, observe these commandments. Because if you don't observe them, you will drift apart from me. You will go away from me. And many people do that. If you don't obey the commandments, you drift away from God. We are not sanctified, so to speak, because we are not consecrated anymore and set apart. So, the 2 commandments, as summarized by Jesus, is love of God and love of neighbor. Relationship with God, first commandment. The sanctity of God. The second commandment, the sanctity of the name of God. The third commandment, the sanctity of the sacred time for God. Yun po yung unang tatlo. The sanctity of God, meaning you shall have no other God. Again, to be sanctified is to be set apart. And the first commandment is, you set me apart from the other gods. Context again, kagagaling lang ng mga Israelita sa Egypt, napakaraming Diyos doon. At sabi ng Panginoon sa kanila, set me apart from the other gods. Ako lang ang Diyos ninyo, wala kayong ibang Diyos. Akin kayo, dahil ako ay inyo rin. Again, context of covenant. So the first commandment is really about sanctifying, setting apart this relationship between God and His people. I will be your God, you'll be my people. Second is sanctifying my name. Do not use my name in vain, because as you abuse my name and disrespect my name, you are also turning away from me. And sanctify the day, the Sabbath that I have given to you, so that we can set it apart. From the 7 days, you set apart 1 day for me, because that is the day that I have rested. Set it apart from me. That's what you mean by sanctification. Sacrum facere, setting apart something for God alone. Yun po ang ibig sabihin ng kabanalan. Ang kabanalan, hindi po ito yung wala kang bahid ng pagkakasala. Hindi po. Ang kabanalan ay yung buhay ko ay laging nakatuon sa Diyos. Ang landas ng buhay ko ay laging patungo sa landas, patungo sa Diyos. Kahit ako'y madalas naliligaw din ng landas. Our means of sanctification is to obey the rules, to follow the commandments, because this is the path that leads us closer to God. Para ba pong sa direksyon na pupunta ka sa isang lugar? Pupunta po ako halimbawa sa Quiapo. Kung ito ang itinakda na daan papunta ng Quiapo, yun ang susundin ko. Pag hindi ko sinunod yung daan papuntang Quiapo, mapupunta ako ng SLEX, Laguna ang labas ko. Mapupunta ako ng NLEX at Bulacan ang labas ko. Kasi bakit? Hindi mo sinunod ang direksyon papuntang Quiapo. The commandments precisely serve that purpose, so that I can be led, so that my path will be set apart towards God and not away from Him. And again, I keep on repeating this. These commandments will be meaningless without the context of the covenant, because God wants us to be with Him and He wants us to be His people. So He set out these commandments so that we can be set apart from the rest, only for Him. First 3 commandments, you shall have no other gods. Ako lang yan. Never use my name in vain. Ang pangalan ko ay sagrado. Hindi pareho ng pangalan ng ibang Diyos o Diyos-Diyosan. At yung oras na binigay ko para sa panalangin at pagsamba, igalang nyo yan kasi para sa akin yan. Tama? Ibigay mo ang para sa akin. At yun ang ibig sabihin ng kabanalan. The second half, or the second part of that 10 commandments, is the relationship with neighbor. You have number 4, sanctity of paternity and maternity. Honor your father and mother. Siyang nagluwal sa iyo, igalang mo sila. Number 5, sanctity of life. Huwag kang papatay, igalang mo ang buhay. Number 6, sanctity of marriage. Huwag mong basta na lang ang kasal ay basta parang kanin na pag mainit, iluluwa pagka napaso. Respect the sanctity of marriage. Number 7, sanctity of private property. Na ang tao ay binigyan ng biyaya, handog ng Diyos, huwag mong nanakawin ito sa Kanya dahil bigay ito ng Diyos sa Kanya. Number 8, sanctity of speech. Thou shalt not curse, thou shalt not swear. Kasi ang salita ay daan para sa kabanalan. Because words are sacred. Palabra de honor. Number 8, sanctity of another spouse. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife. Banal, sagrado ang usapan ng mag-asawa. Huwag mong pagnanasaan ang iba. At pang-10, the sanctity of another property. Na ang nasa kanya o kung ano man ang para sa kanya, huwag mo itong pagnanasaan. So 2 sections of the 10 commandments. 1, sanctity in relation to God, and 2, sanctity in relation to human affairs, yung mga kalakaran ng tao. Each of the commandments in the Decalogue is meant to spell out exactly what it means for the people of Israel. First, to be holy, and for all of us also to be holy in the same manner, in relationship to God and to human beings. The prohibition of idolatry, the first commandment, upholds the holiness of God, who is set apart and above all creatures and is alone worthy of worship and adoration. For this reason, the service or worship given to God alone can be given to no other creature, much less to a graven image. Hindi natin ito pwedeng ibigay sa iba. Ang pag-ibig at pagsamba ay tanging sa Diyos lamang. Not even graven images. And what do you mean by graven images? Not these images that we have, because these are artistic representations of our faith. Graven images. Graven comes from grave. Ibig sabihin, dead images. Images that have no life. Images that have no connection with God. And let me explain it further later kung bakit ito yung talagang tinututulan ng maraming hindi natin kapwa Katoliko. Na para bagang ang pagsamba sa Diyos ay hindi kabilang ang pagbibigay sa mga imahe ng paggalang. Number 2, the prohibition of blasphemy. The second commandment upholds the holiness of God's name. The command to remember the Sabbath upholds the holiness of time. The command to honor one's parents upholds the sanctity of the home. The prohibition, you shall not kill, defends the sanctity of life. The prohibition against adultery is to preserve the sanctity of marriage. The outlawing of theft emphasizes the fact that another person's property is set apart for them and they cannot be forcibly taken without committing injustice. The forbidding of false witness preserves the sanctity of truth and truthfulness. And the 9 and 10 commandments against coveting one's neighbor's wife or property take the law regarding relationship with one's neighbor and into the interior of the human person. In the commandments 9 to 10, it's not really about the neighbor and the wife. It's really about covetousness. Because this will eventually be perfected by Jesus in Mark chapter 7, 21 to 23. All sins ultimately find their root cause in the disordered desires of the human heart. At dito nagkakaiba ang Katoliko at ang mga Protestante. At dito na tayo sa tanong ng ating online parishioner. Bakit, Father, magkakaiba ang Katoliko at Protestante sa pag-unawa ng 10 utos? Bakit sa ibang mga denominasyon ay 4 at 6? Magkahiwalay ang prohibition for graven images and having one God alone to be adored and worshipped. We come now to how to count the 10 commandments. And let me end with this as our answer to the question. First, it is clear in the scriptures that there are 10 commandments. Exodus chapter 20, verse 1 to 17. The Jews and the Protestants, they have a common understanding, and as well as the Catholics, we have the common understanding that there are 10 commandments. There is just a difference in the counting. The counting in terms of what is the first and second, and what is the 9th and the 10th. Nagkakaiba po kasi sa Protestant tradition, ang first and second ay magkahiwalay. What is the first commandment? Thou shalt not have other gods. And what is commandment number 2? Thou shalt not have graven images. 1 and 2 separate from each other. And then 9 and 10, covetousness of neighbor's wife and neighbor's goods are listed together. So doon po nagkakaiba. Dahil 10, pero sa unang 2, ang mga Protestante, pinaghiwala yung unang 2. At pinagsama yung huling 2. Sa mga Katoliko, baliktad. Pinag-isa ang unang 2 at pinaghiwalay ang huling 2. Bakit? Kasi may explanation nga po doon. Dahil sa pagsusuri ng mga dalubhasa ng Biblia, ang pagsamba sa Diyos ay iisang utos lamang. At ang pagsamba sa mga Diyos-Diyosan ay kasama ng pagsamba o ang prohibition of worshiping graven images is part and necessarily part of adoring only one God. Hindi mo pwedeng paghiwalayin yon. Kasi iisang utos lang yon, na ako lamang ang iyong Diyos at huwag kang sasamba ng iba pa. Those are just 2 connecting ideas. At yon ang ating sinasampalatayanan. That the first 2 commandments are one, because the second is just a further elaboration of the first. It is all about worshiping God and having no other gods besides God. Wala po tayong problema kasi nga, iisa lang naman talaga ang Diyos na ating sinasamba. At At yung mga paratang na sinasamba natin, itong mga imaheng ito ay malaking kabulaanan at malaking malayo sa katotohanan. Dahil sa katotohanan, iisa lang Diyos na ating sinasamba. Iisang Diyos na pinayag ni Jesus, isa, ngunit tatlong persona, Father, Son, and Spirit. And by the way, and we will go into this finally, the 10 Commandments were perfected by Jesus Himself. And therefore, the 10 Commandments that we know is not the 10 Commandments of Exodus. The 10 Commandments that we subscribe to is the 10 Commandments spelled out by Jesus Himself. Case in point, for example, in the commandment of the Sabbath. Para sa mga Kristiyano, ang Sabbath ay hindi na yung Sabbath ng mga Hudyo. Ang Sabbath ng mga Kristiyano ay ang araw ng muling pagkabuhay ng Panginoon. For the Jews, the Sabbath is Saturday. For the Christians, it is Sunday, the day of the Lord. So in that sense, we have violated, so to speak, the 10 Commandments, not because we wanted so, but because Jesus perfected the old commandment and has made it new. That is why the new commandment is Jesus takes precedence over all other commandments of the Old Testament. And Jesus said specifically something about it. I did not come to abolish the law and the prophets. I have come to fulfill them. Naparito ako para hindi alisin ang mga batas, kung hindi para bigyang kaganapan ang batas. Dahil ang Decalogos ay mga salita ng Diyos na binigay kay Moises sa bundok ng Sinai. Ngunit ang salitang ito, the Logos, the Word, became flesh in Jesus. And therefore, in Jesus, the 10 Commandments, the laws of Moses of old, are given a new way of understanding. And in fact, Jesus summarized the 10 Commandments so beautifully. It is about love and fidelity to God. It is about loving God above all, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your heart, with all your strength, and loving your neighbor as you love yourself. At bakit naman sa mga Katoliko, ang unang dalawa ay pinag-isa? At bakit ito iisa lamang? Sapagkat ang pag-ibig sa Diyos at pagtalikod sa ibang Diyos ay iisa lamang. Hindi ka pwedeng sumamba sa Diyos kung may iba ka pang sinasamba. It is just one motion of turning away from sin and turning towards God in baptism. One motion of worshiping God above all and turning away from the pseudo-gods that try to imitate God but could not match who God is. At bakit naman natin pinaghiwalay yung dalawang huli? Kasi si Jesus na rin ang nagsabi sa Mark chapter 7. Binigay sa atin ng Panginoon. Kung ako pong tatanungin, ano po talaga ang puso ng 10 Commandments? Yes, napakahalaga ng first 3. Pero tingin ko po sa paliwanag ni Jesus, pinakamahalaga ang 9 and 10. It is not about thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife or thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's goods. It is about the human heart, the covetous heart that always desires something that is not of God. At yun po ang dahilan kung bakit pinaghiwalay ang 9 and 10. Because the covetous heart of the human person is really so powerful that it leads us away from God. That we need to sanctify human relationships and that we need to sanctify our view of the world and not just limit ourselves to the material goods of the world. Napakahalaga na sa atin po, ang puso ay nakatuon lamang sa Diyos. Hindi sa kung ano paman. At yun po ang pinakadiwa ng 10 utos ng Panginoon. And let me end this way. Ang mga batas ay may kabuluhan kung ito ay nagdadala sa atin para mas lalong magmahal. Kasi kung ang mga batas ay nagiging dahilan para mas lalo tayong magrebelde, hindi natin naiintindihan ang kahulugan ng mga panuntunan sa buhay. The commandments are given to us precisely to lead us to love God and to love our neighbor. If this does not lead us to love, these commandments would be useless. They would just be moralistic principles that do not govern a loving relationship. Mga kapatid, Decalogos, 10 words have been fulfilled in the Word that became flesh. He showed us what it means to obey, to follow the commandments. And the greatest of these commandments is love. Kaya sana po sa araw-araw, tingnan po natin yung buhay natin na nakaugat lagi sa batas ng pag-ibig sa Diyos at kapwa. Hindi man natin ma-memorize ang 10, maintindihan natin yan. Pero sana, wag natin makaligtaan na ang lahat ng mga ito binigay sa atin para ang ating buhay ay maialay, maitalaga sa Diyos lamang. At ang lahat ng mga umahad lang sa atin para maitalaga ang lahat sa Diyos ay iiwanan natin. Yun po ang magiging ebanghelyo bukas. Na pag natagpuan mo ang tunay na kayamanan sa Diyos, iiwanan mong lahat. Mapasayo lang ang kanyang pagmamahal. So today, let us learn from the 10 commandments. It is about loving God above all. And the best expression of loving God is loving one another. So, sasagutin po natin ang tanong, bakit po sa mga Katoliko ang pagbibilang ng 10 commandments ay 3 at 7? At bakit hindi 4 at 6? Ang sagot po natin ay sapagkat ang pag-ibig sa Diyos at pagtatalaga ng sarili sa Diyos ay may katumbas na pagtalikod sa iba pang mga bagay. You cannot consecrate your life to God if you are not able to distance or to turn away from the things that are not of God. So the first 2 commandments are taken as one, because they involve one movement of love, of turning to God and turning away from other gods. While in the 9th and 10th commandments, they are separated because the human heart is just so frail and so covetous that it is always desiring other things than God. And for the sake of emphasis, the two are differentiated because the dynamics of a covetous heart towards people is also different from our covetousness towards goods and properties. Maraming beses nasisilaw tayo ng mga material na bagay at maraming beses ang hinahanap natin ng ating puso ay mga bagay na makamundo lamang. Ang gustong sabihin sa atin ng simbahan, doon tayo sa Panginoon. Consecrate, sanctify, set apart yourself for God alone. And when we do that, we will also turn away from the things that impede us, hinder us in following God. At the end of it all, it is to love God above all and to love our neighbor as we love ourselves. Sinyo lang po muna at tayo po ay magpatuloy ng ating pagninilay. Hindi pa po tapos ang Book of Exodus. Mga ilang araw pa po ito. Pero bear with me. Let us try to understand Exodus, whose heart is the Ten Commandments in Moses, and we'll see that in the end, we will understand why Jesus is called the new Moses. If we understand the old Moses and the old commandment, we will also understand why Jesus gives us a new commandment and why Jesus is called as the new Moses. Maraming salamat sa inyo pong pakikinig. God bless you all.